Hi guys, welcome back to my YouTube channel and welcome back to a Sims 4 speedrunning video, or welcome to the channel if you are new here. So in today's video I'm going to be building in the world of Chestnut Ridge, which is the world that we got from the expansion pack The Sims 4 Horse Ranch, and I'm going to be building what I tried to make into a cheap rundown family home for a really big family. So this house ends up having 6 bedrooms and 2.5 bathrooms, and it's built on a 30 by 20 slot. Now, this week, I really want you to come into the game and just build something that feels a little bit more cheaper and slightly run down. I just feel like recently I've been building a lot of like big expensive things, whether it be like mansions or just like really expensive townhouses, or just I feel like recently I've just been building things that could potentially hurt your Sims bank account. And so yeah, this week I want you to come into the game and build something that I intended to be quite cheap. I don't know if it actually ended up being cheap, but I definitely wanted to have a bit of a cheaper family home. And so yeah, that is exactly what I did. And so I really hope you guys like it. But anyway, moving on from that and getting on and talking a little bit more about the build itself and also what I'm doing right now. So as you can see, I've already figured out the main like shell and structure for this build. It's actually quite a simple structure. I was looking at a picture that I found on Pinterest. I'll find it for you and I'll pop it up on the screen right now. The actual picture itself, it's got like white paneling wallpaper, but this one, I mean, you can see already I'm already trying to incorporate like the dingier kind of feeling towards this house, because so far I've got 2 different wallpapers. I've got one from Seasons and then one from base game, and I've currently got this like kind of like metally kind of roof. I do keep the roof, but I end up changing the wallpaper just because I don't know, when I was building it I just didn't like it, but now looking back on it I kind of wish I would have kept the wallpaper. I might. No. Would it annoy you if I changed the wallpaper back? I don't know. I was just going through a little bit of a dilemma when it came around to choosing the wallpaper for this house. But for this build, I must admit, it's one of them ones which I'm not sure how many of you are actually going to, you know, download this house and want to play in it. Because to me personally, the way that I decorated it doesn't scream comfy, cute kind of family home. I more so built this for my save file and kind of like the lore behind the family. Now, like I've already said, the house ends up having 6 bedrooms and 2.5 bathrooms, which I must admit is a little bit of a weird bedroom to bathroom ratio, but for the idea of the family that's going to live here in my safe hole, I imagine that they're always like fighting over the bathroom, like they're always squabbling who's going to get in there first. But then secondly, for the family themselves, I imagine with all the different bedrooms, half of them maybe didn't used to be bedrooms, and you know, over time this family had to kind of like adapt their house and change some rooms around to make more space for yeah, all the different family members. Now, in total, this house can sleep 8 Sims, which by default, that is the maximum amount of Sims that you can have in one household. There is some mods out there, so you can change the maximum household size, and I've seen people do it for like the 100 baby challenge and stuff, where you could have like 40 Sims living on one lot. But where this build is my save file, and also I just think for general convenience, especially for like a console player or something, I made it so yeah, it's only going to be able to have 8 Sims. I say only, it's the maximum amount, but the way that I decorated the rooms, we have 1 single dad's room, we have 1 young adult's room, we've then got 2 teenager rooms. One of them I decorated to be for a set of twin teenage boys, and then the other one is for like a single, not a single, but like a single teen girl who doesn't have a twin, that she just sleeps in her room on her own. But then we have 2 kids' rooms. One of them I decorated to be for a little boy who just sleeps in his bedroom by himself. But then the last bedroom in this house is again a double room, but I imagine is for a little girl who shares a room and sleeps in the same room as who I imagine she tells people is her cousin, but it's actually her auntie. They are the same age, by the way. The little girl that shares a room with her auntie, who she tells everyone is her cousin, that they are probably around about, I'm going to say like 8, 9, 10, that kind of age range. But yeah, the way that the bedrooms kind of panned out, I just thought it'd be really fun for like a storytelling purpose to have a little girl who imagine that she's the best of friends of her auntie, and when everyone's like, oh, how did you meet? Are you in school or something? Instead of explaining the whole entire family dynamic, they just say, yeah, we're cousins, because it's just a little bit easier that way. But pretty much for this storyline, the way that I kind of like planned it out in my head, and the way that I structured it started off with the dad. So I'm going to tell you it from the dad's point of view and then kind of as we go throughout it. But one thing that I wanted to mention early on is the dad of this household is actually a fellow townie's brother, if you want to put it that way. Now, I'm not sure if you would have seen it, and don't worry, you wouldn't have had to go and like watch that video to watch this video, but a few months ago I built I think I titled it like a realistic family home or something in the world of Evergreen Harbour, and I built it for the Harris family. Now, in the Harris family, the mum of the household, I imagine that she is originally from the world of Chestnut Ridge, and the dad of this household, that is her brother. Again, you don't have to go and watch that video to then know what I'm talking about in this one, but it's just basically something that I wanted to mention because when I did do that build a few months ago, I mentioned that the mother in the household, yeah, I imagine that she was from the world of Chestnut Ridge, and I even said in that video that I imagine that they've got loads of cousins and stuff in the world still, and I remember by their front door I placed down like a little postcard which had a horse in it, and I said it was from their cousins or like from their relatives in the world of Chestnut Ridge, and that family is, yeah, this family. But starting off with the storyline for the dad, now I imagine that the dad got married quite young. I imagine that he married his high school sweetheart, and pretty much straight out of high school they started a family. Now, in the end, this couple ended up having 7 children in total, which in my head, that is the dad's like ultimate dream. Like, he always wanted to have a really big family, but yeah, in total, him and his wife ended up having 7 children, but 6 of them are actually twins, which I thought would be really fun because basically I had this idea in my head of, well, what about if you have multiple different sets of twins, but then there is one, you know, single child that doesn't have a twin that kind of feels a little bit like a lone wolf, and that is what ends up being the teen girl of this household, which she's got her own little storyline going on, which we will get into. But yeah, in total, this couple, they started off with a set of boy and girl, and then they moved on and had 2 boys, then they had a single girl, and then they ended it with a little boy and a little girl. So lots of different brothers and sisters, basically. And I mean, for a few years, this family was happy as, you know, they were just trotting along. I imagine it was a situation of the mum was very much the homemaker. She would be the person that cooks for everyone, cooks like really big dinners every single evening. She would clean the house, she would maintain the house, and it kind of plays into a reason of why the house is kind of ended up in the state that it is now. But yeah, they were fine. The dad, he inherited his family business, which you will see me decorate the family business because it's located on their home lot. It's actually in their garden shed. Kind of similar situations to their cousins over in the world of Evergreen Harbour, but it's a different family business because their cousins in the world of Evergreen Harbour, like I said, you wouldn't have had to watch that video, but basically they share their love of gardening with fellow customers of Evergreen Harbour from their small business. However, this family have a slightly different business, not too different, but a little bit different, just to make it a little bit more interesting. But yeah, they were happy, and eventually, a few years down the line, their teenage daughter, so their oldest one at this point, basically came home to her mum and dad and told them that she was moving out because she had fallen pregnant. Now, to kind of give you a rough idea of where I imagine the rest of the family were in terms of their life stages or their kind of like their own timeline, this is kind of like a rough idea, but I was thinking when this daughter came home and she said to her mum and dad, you know, I'm moving out, I'm pregnant, I'm going to go start a life with, I don't know what her boyfriend's name would have been, maybe like Derek or whatever the name was, but I imagine that she, you know, herself, she's a twin, and so her twin would be the exact same age as her, also a teenager. The second set of twins, which is the 2 twin boys, they would be, in my head, maybe like 6, 7, 8, somewhere around that kind of benchmark. The girl as well, who is the single girl, I even call her the single girl, but the daughter of the household that isn't part of any set of twins. There is a reason for it, by the way, which I will tell you about, but she was probably around about the same age as the 2 twin boys. And then the 2 youngest twins, so the boy and the girl, I was thinking at this point they were around about baby kind of age. Sorry interrupting myself over here, but I did want to mention over here that I'm placing down a bubble blower on top of this camper van. Just wanted to kind of like interrupt myself to let you know I've playtested this. Your Sims can still use that bubble blower, sit on the armchairs, and then also use the telescope. Sorry, this storyline that I've got is so long, but I really want to tell you it because I'm really like excited about this family and just kind of like the dynamics and all the different like little hidden bits of lore going into it. I'm really excited about it. But yeah, I'm going to try and still point out stuff what I'm doing in case that you might want to know if it's functional or if something's from a certain place or something. But yeah, down the line, the teen girl did eventually end up moving out with her high school boyfriend, and she did start a family. That little girl that she had when she was a teenager, she is now grown up and she is now a kid in my head, and she is going to be the technically auntie of his household. They did move back in, but there is a reason why they moved back in, which I'll get on about later. But around about the time that she moved out of her boyfriend, unfortunately, her twin brother basically was in what I was imagining to be a really tragic accident, and unfortunately lost his life. Which, even though this is just The Sims and like the characters that I'm telling you about are literally just going to be pixels in a sense, I always feel like really bad whenever I have a storyline that has someone, or multiple in this case, Sims, passing away. But I feel like for the idea that I was having for this house and kind of like their storyline and their lore, and it kind of incorporates into the way that I decorated the house and the reason why I did certain things, it does just make it a little bit more interesting, I think, to discover in gameplay. But yeah, sadly her teen brother, her twin, did sadly pass away, and of course I imagine that it absolutely shook the whole entire household, as it would for anyone, and I imagine it was really sad for a really long time. And eventually, after a few years, they've kind of learnt to deal with the grief. They kind of learnt to kind of work around it. We do actually have a grief system in The Sims 4. We got it from the Life and Death expansion pack. Must admit, sometimes it does wind me up, but it is nice to incorporate into storyline purposes. But I imagine that, yeah, they eventually, after a few years, they managed to know how to deal with their grief properly. And then, sadly, a few more years later, the mum of this household also passed away. Which, again, it's really sad, and I just feel really just bad for this family. But you know how I said that I imagined that the mum was always the homemaker? She would be the person that would cook big family meals, and she would be the person that cleans the house and kind of maintains everything and keeps it in tip-top shape. I really want you to show you that in the storyline. I'm going to mention something about this in the family biography, and then you can kind of visit the house and then kind of see how it's starting to almost like deteriorate in places. They've got like fallen down fences that they've tried to keep up, or they've got overgrown like greenery in their front garden, bits of trash here and there, little bits of like gunk on the walls. I really tried to show it in the furnishings that, yeah, just over time this house has started to kind of like deteriorate in a way. But it's so fun to decorate in this way as well, like having loads of like little like rougher pieces incorporated into the house, like random bits of trash or like random little like knickknacks here and there. I always love decorating houses like this, but I thought especially in this case the storyline of, yeah, in my head, the mum of the household, she was always the one that used to take care of the house, and since she's passed, I kind of wanted to show how the house now looks in a way. And I mean, I did mention earlier that the dad of the household, he inherited the family business. You can actually see that I've now moved over into the family business room. Didn't know what it was, but it is the family business room, because the family business that I imagine that this household have is they sell nectar in the world of Chestnut Ridge. Now, I will get back to the storyline shortly because there is still quite a lot to unpack with this particular family, but the reason why I decided to give this particular household a nectar selling business is because, to be honest, multiple reasons. One reason being the nectar making skill, which is something that basically you see the big machine in the right corner. It's got like a big barrel or something. You can put different types of fruit, vegetable, herbs, like random bits and bobs into that big barrel, and your Sims can basically step on them and make like bottles of nectar. It came with the Horse Ranch expansion pack, which the Horse Ranch expansion pack gave us the world of Chestnut Ridge. So that was like one of the reasons in my mind. The second reason being, their cousins that live in the world of Evergreen Harbour, they are Sims that have a small business run out of their garage, and they sell gardening items. They sell loads of different mushrooms that we've got from the Cottage Living expansion pack, like loads of different like spicy ones. They sell a few different herbs and just like random little bits and bobs. I think they also do, off memory, sell bottles of juice fizz that your Sims can make. But then thirdly, the reason why I thought it would be really fun to incorporate this family having a nectar business is because the world of Chestnut Ridge, I've actually recently been playing in myself, and I've noticed, and maybe I'm just playing the game wrong because I must admit I never get my Sims to go to the convenience store because I'm always out of time, they're always closed, but it's really hard to come across a bottle of nectar in this world if your Sims don't make it. And so I thought, well, for my save file, it might just be really handy to have a dedicated small business somewhere in the world where, yeah, your Sims could pop in and just buy themselves a bottle of nectar for the evening. I do end up placing down the little small business, like, ticket kiosk, if you know what I'm talking about. I place it down kind of by the front door, and then you'll see shortly I do place down a big, like, metal shelving unit, and there I go to town and I've placed down so many different bottles of nectar. But something I did want to point out, when I was doing this room, I had it in my mind that this family specialises in potato nectar, which sounds weird, but it's literally a type of nectar that your Sims can make or they can just buy in the game. But you might have noticed in this room I have some kitchen counters, and on the kitchen counters I placed down random little knickknacks. I placed down a basket of different fruit and vegetables that I imagine are yet to be made into some sort of bottle of nectar. But then I also placed down some kitchen scales, and on the kitchen scales I placed down some potatoes that I was picturing that this Sims family will like weigh into the, eventually put into a bottle of nectar. But then also on the little like shelving unit where your Sims can actively buy a bottle, I purposely placed it so I have big bottles of nectar like smack bang in the middle. It's a tiny thing, but it was just something that I was thinking of when I was decorating this room, because potato nectar is just a really bizarre concept to me. But yeah, I just thought it was really fitting for this household. But getting back to the dad storyline, so this is pretty much where I imagine that he would spend the majority of his time. Like I said, I imagine that from a very young age, he started having kids quite young, like kind of fresh out of high school, if you want to put it that way. But I imagine that he started working for his family business, which is now his business. It has been passed down to him, but he spent the majority of his life basically just making nectar and selling it to fellow residents of the world of Chestnut Ridge. I imagine that even now, years after his wife has passed away, he still continues just to be the main breadwinner, if you want to put it that way, of the household. And in kind of like regards to that is why now his eldest daughter has decided to move back in, the one that is a young adult. That is why there is a young adult bedroom in this house. But he basically asked his eldest daughter, who, she moved out when she was a teenager, she went and had a baby, I imagine with a partner who, let's pretend his name is Derek, maybe I'll make him Derek in my safe file, but she did have a relationship and she was starting a family, but somewhere along the line that relationship didn't work out, and it kind of played well into kind of like the timeline of things that, her dad asked her to move back in and kind of help maintain the house. She doesn't do a very good job, and I also thought it would be really funny for storyline purposes if she was like now the main person who like cooks all the dinners in the household. You'll see it, and I'll try and point it out in the kitchen, but I was thinking that she is horrendous at cooking, and so next to the oven I purposely placed down a fire extinguisher, which I can picture all the different kids of his household are consistently like gravitating towards whenever she's cooking their family dinner or something. You can see that I've now moved in to the family home. I will say though, I did decide to kind of like chop up this hallway, because when I was decorating this hallway, it was actually a really big initial like entrance into the home, and of sped up footage, the section that I cut out was 3 minutes long, and honestly it was literally just like the little kind of like area where you would enter into the back garden of the house, like where the back door is. I completely cut it out. There will be some screenshots of it, but yeah, sped up footage. I had like 3 minutes worth of footage of me literally just cluttering up a shelving unit, but you didn't really miss much. Maybe like 1 or 2 photo frames that eventually I'll be putting pictures of the mum of his household, and then also the eldest boy that, sadly passed away. I placed down lots of different photo frames to eventually put their photos in to kind of like tie into the storyline purposes. And then also by the front door I placed down a postcard, which I was thinking was Evergreen Harbour. It doesn't really look like it, but you know how I said that in their cousin's house that live in the world of Evergreen Harbour, I placed down a postcard by the front door and it had a horse on it, and I was saying in the video where I built it that I imagine it was from their relatives that live in the world of Chestnut Ridge. Well, I imagine that the relatives that live in the world of Evergreen Harbour, you know, the cousins of this family, they've also sent them a postcard, and so I put it by the front door. It's a small detail, but I did it for a reason, and so I just wanted to point it out. Like I said, coming into this build, I really wanted this to more be like a lore-filled house rather than... I mean, you can, of course, if you wanted to download this off the gallery, feel free to, like, do whatever you fancy with it, but I don't imagine many people would want to download this build off the gallery and play in it as I've decorated it, because... yeah, I did try to go down a bit of a dingier route with the decorating, but it's purely just for, like, the lore purposes of my save file. If you've been watching me for a while, you know that, yeah, I'm in the process of trying to create a save file, and I'm trying to have so much depth to it, and so this is one of them houses which it might not necessarily be essential for your gameplay and you might not want to download it, and that's absolutely fine. Or if you wanted to, 100% you could download this build and renovate it. Maybe you've got a family that have inherited a house and it's an absolute tip, and through gameplay you could kind of go through slowly and update things, you know, it could tie into your storyline. But yeah, for the storyline for The Sims in this house, I just decorated it in a very particular way. But by the oven, again, something that was a small detail but I wanted to point it out. You know how I said I imagine that this family specialises in potato wine? Well, I imagine that they also eat quite a lot of potatoes, and so on the oven I placed down a little, like, oh, what's it called, like a pot, and then inside of it I placed down a bucket with some water, and then I put down some potatoes inside of it. I was thinking that was, you know, for their dinner, but it kind of ties into the potato wine. It was just, again, small little detail or something, but you will see shortly that I am going to be adding in the fire extinguisher for the eldest daughter that is meant to be the main cook of the household, but she just doesn't do a very good job at it. Now, like I said, this daughter in question, she moved out when she was a teenager. She wanted to go and, you know, start her family quite early on in her life, like exactly how her mum and dad did, basically. But eventually, after she went through a breakup, or maybe there was some sort of like scandal that went on and she ended the relationship. I don't really know exactly what happened there, but she decided to move back in with, yeah, her dad and the rest of her family. How many brothers has she got? 3 brothers and 2 sisters. But by this point, and for where it's going to be in my save file, I'm going to make it so her baby that she had when she was, you know, just a teenager has now aged up and is now a kid. And so that is the reason why there is 2 little girls that share a room, but they call themselves cousins, but one of them is actually the other one's auntie because it's her sister's daughter, if that makes any sense. I just thought it'd be a really fun relationship dynamic to have in my save file, because I just thought normally if you saw 2 little girls in the same household, you would just assume that they would either be maybe twins or maybe just sisters, maybe push the boat out and have it so they're cousins. But I just thought it made it really interesting having, yeah, one be an auntie to another one. But either way, in this kitchen, as you can see, I'm just coming in now and basically just trying to finish it off with all the cluttering. I by this point have placed down the fire extinguisher right by the oven, and then also something that I actually forgot until just this point, I again placed down another potato, but this time it is on a chopping board, and I've placed it down with, it's actually a pumpkin knife in game, but basically I wanted to make it look like that someone was like chopping up the dinner, and it's on a little chopping board. The chopping board itself is just a clutter decoration. We got it from the kitchen clutter kit. But then I placed down a potato, some spinach that I was thinking was lettuce, because I don't know, it just looks like lettuce to me. And then also a clove of garlic, and then a pumpkin knife, because the pumpkin knife, if you put it out the debug menu, it won't disappear when you upload it to the gallery. However, if you upload just like a regular debug knife, the debug knife will disappear. So if you were to download the house, the knife will be gone, if that makes any sense. But you can see I pretty much just finished up that kitchen, and now I've moved over into the dining room. Now I have still got some elements of a storyline that I am yet to tell you about, especially with the teenage girl, but I'm gonna keep that until we move over and we decorate kind of like the individual bedrooms, just because I try and do so many different things into this house and just try and incorporate so many little like tiny details that I kind of want to talk about them. And so yeah, I still will tell you some more about the storyline, but currently made in here, as you can see, for the dining room table. I decided to purposely make it look a little bit mismatched and a little bit put together, but not put together in like a nice extravagant way, more put together in a sense of I really wanted to try and get the point across that this family, they just kept on having more family members. Like over time, their family just kept on extending. And in my mind, sometimes if you have a dining room table and then you have maybe guests come over or maybe relatives come over for dinner or something, and you don't have enough space around the table, you'll kind of just find another sort of table and kind of like join it onto that. For this household, I did that, but made it so it is their main dining room space. Now, I was thinking that their table was initially maybe like a 4-seater table, and then maybe they had another kid, so they had to add another chair, and then they had even more kids. You know, there is twins that run in the genetics of this family, and so more kept on popping out, and so over time, yeah, they kept their original table, but instead of maybe buying a similar looking wood, they just maybe used like the old table that used to be in the back garden or something and shoved it onto the end of their main table, and it looks mismatched, but it sounds really silly, but I feel like in a way it kind of like tells a story in a way of like there are so many different household members, and they had to find space in this house to accommodate to everyone. It sounds really silly, and I don't know if you're going to be able to relate to this in a way, but it kind of reminds me of Christmas in real life, because sometimes at Christmas we will go around like my boyfriend's family's house, and they have like a big table that normally suits their whole like household members, like the amount of them that live in their house, it seats all of them. But at Christmas time there is just so many people that, you know, get together, and oftentimes you'll have their main dining room table and then they kind of find another table and just like put it onto the end of it to kind of seat more people around the table to eat together. It kind of just reminded me of Christmas in a way when I was doing the dining room space in this house. But on the actual dining room table itself, I placed down purposely 8 plates. It's actually just 2 clusters of 4 together, but I was thinking where there is 8 household members, it would just be nice to add in some plates for them. And so, I placed down some plates onto the table, and then also some salt and pepper and like random like bits of paper and like random little knickknacks and bits and bobs. But now moving on, as you can see, I've now moved on into the living room. So in here, I decided to go for mismatched furniture pieces. I use this one armchair, which is from the Basement Treasures kit, the brown one in the corner, which I feel like I use that armchair quite a lot, but in my defense, it is one of the more realistic and then also kind of like comfier looking armchairs that we've got in the game. It comes in multiple different like colour swatches, but I just use it in the brown swatch, and if you look at it, it looks like it's got like wear and tear marks and like small little like scratches here, and it just looks really realistic to me in the game. But I place that down in here. I then also use the 3-seater sofa that we got from the Werewolves, I was about to say expansion pack then, no, game pack. We actually haven't had a game pack in forever, but the Werewolves game pack. And then also I use a 2-seater love seat, which is the purple one on the other side of the room. That is from the Cats and Dogs expansion pack. I'm also sure at one point I do try and add some more seating into this lounge room, because off memory I think I added in, I think it was like a little stool, or maybe it might have been like another armchair or something, but the way that I've currently got it, it can only sit 6 household members, and like I said, this household, it's a household of 8, and so there is multiple different members of the family that, could sit around the TV and watch maybe like a film together or something. But the way that this floor plan of the lounge room turned out, I had to have the archway kind of leading into this room in a really particular area, and so where I put the little love seat, I didn't really want to have another 3-seater because it just would have looked a little bit strange. And you can see I did actually add another armchair. And so in total, if you wanted to, you could have 7 members of the family sit in this room. Maybe the 8th sits on the floor or something like that, because there just wasn't enough space for every single household member. But something that I did do in this room is I did purposely place down a little toy box, and so I was more so thinking, because some of the kids' areas might have been a little bit tight for space, they actually end up being all right in terms of the kids still have activities in their bedroom, but at this point I didn't know how they were going to pan out, and so I did purposely place down a kids' toy box in here. And so maybe maybe one of the kids likes to sit down and play with their toys whilst every other household member watches TV or something. But something else that I placed down into this living room is behind one of the armchairs, I'm pretty sure. But going back to, I'm going to speak more about like the Sims and their individual personalities when I like decorate their own bedroom spaces. But for the bedroom that I decorated to be for a little boy that doesn't share their room with anyone, I decorated it to be a bit of like a space theme. They're the sim that I imagine would use this telescope that I placed down onto the camper van outside, but pretty much I imagine that they really like space. And so in this room, yeah, I'm pretty sure I placed down a school project, ones that, you know, if you've got the Parenthood game pack, sometimes kids will come home from school and they'll have like a project assigned to them, and if you get them to finish it within a certain amount of time, they kind of like get better grades or something along the lines of that. Basically, I placed down a space related one behind the armchair. I do also place down some more of them upstairs in their bedroom, but the one that I placed down behind the armchair is a really like bad quality one, but the ones in their bedroom are a little bit better. I think I placed down like the robot one and then also the rocket one in their bedroom. But either way, moving over, as you can see, I've now moved on into one of the bathrooms. Now, this is actually the half bathroom that I was talking about. Like I said, there is 2.5 in this house. Shortly, I'm going to be moving over into one of the bathrooms, but I really just wanted there to be a space where your sim could pop to the loo before they go out for the day, and also somewhere where your sims can do some laundry. And so in here, initially I was going to place down a washing machine and a tumble dryer, but then I decided against it, remove the tumble dryer and then place down a hanging line outside so your sims can like hang their washing out to dry in the sunshine. I did also place down a boiler in here as well, which the boiler that I placed down is from the Restoration Workshop kit, I'm pretty sure. I feel like when that kit first came out, I was calling it Restoration Hardware or something along the lines of that, but it is one of the more recent kits that we have in the game, which, saying that, we actually haven't had a kit in the game for a few months now, which honestly I'm actually kind of happy about, because I feel like at the start of the year the Sims team were just giving us so many different kits, and it was just so hard to keep track of like where all these different individual like clutter items for which particular kit was from where, and it was a lot. And I feel like recently they've kind of like gone a bit quiet on the kit front, which I appreciate, because it's nice to get small little bite-sized amount of content every once in a while, which a kit is literally meant to be like a small bite-sized amount of DLC. But I feel like at the start of the year, yeah, they just gave us like 10 in like 2 or 3 months or so, and it was just so overwhelming. But it is from one of the more recent kits, basically. We do also have a boiler from the For Rent expansion pack, but I just prefer the one that we got from a kit, which is funny because the one from the expansion pack you would think looks better, but I don't know, I just feel like the one from the kit looks a little bit more realistic in a way. But either way, in here, as you can see, I'm actually just finishing up one of the bathrooms in the house. Now, this is the bathroom that I imagine the 2 little girls and then also the teen girl would share, and so I purposely placed down 3 toothbrushes. I placed down like a little, you know, the one where it's like a glass and it's got a toothbrush in it and a little like tube of toothpaste. I placed that one down, but it's only got 1 toothbrush in it, and instead of like putting the toothbrushes into it, like move objects in it, I just thought, well, sometimes kids are messy and sometimes they just leave their stuff everywhere, and so I placed down, yeah, individual toothbrushes onto the sink. But now moving on, as you can see, I've now moved on into the first bedroom, and this is the one that is going to be shared between a little girl and then also her auntie, who is also a little girl. So in here, I really wanted to try and follow through the theme of this house is very lived in. You know, it's just a lot of the furniture pieces are old, and it's just it's a very loved house, put it that way. And so coming into decorating their room, I really wanted to have quite an old looking chest of drawers. And I'm thinking back to when I was a kid, my little like bedside table, I stuck so many stickers on that bedside table, and then trying to get them up as I grew up was so hard because you had like sticker residue. And so I just thought I would do a similar thing into this room. You can see I placed down this chest of drawers. The one that I've used is from the high school years expansion pack. It looks like it's been painted over time, like by itself, but basically what I did is I went into the decorations category and I found tiny little details, and I say details, decals, and I rotated them and I made it look like there were different stickers that have been put onto the chest of drawers. The ones that I used are honestly from a different mixture of different DLCs, but on the left hand side I placed down a tiny little Tooth Fairy one which we got from the Growing Together expansion pack, and then next to that I have a Plum Bob, which it looks like a plum bob that's like dancing or something, but that is from the Businesses and Hobbies expansion pack. It's meant to be like a small business decal, but I don't know, I just thought it was kind of fun for like a sticker to pop into a kid's room. But on the other side you can see I've got a quite decent size cat sticker. Now I completely spoke over it because I was speaking about something else in terms of storyline, but I was thinking that for this household one of the little girls really likes animals, and it's the one on the right hand side. You can see that I changed one of the beds so they're kind of like mismatched beds, but the one on the right hand side has sheep on it, and I was thinking that this little girl really wants a cat, but where I've already got 8 household members, I can't really add one in to the household, and so I'm thinking for my save hole I might make it so there is stray cats around the house itself. I was thinking about this idea when I was decorating kind of like the initial entrance into the home, because when you walk up like the front steps we've got, I'm pretty sure, a rocking chair on the left hand side, and then I think like a little plant decoration, but on the right hand side we've got a planter pot, and then I placed down some newspaper and then also a litter box. And so yeah, maybe that's somewhere where the stray cats go for a wee. I must admit I never actually play with the stray animal lot type in my own personal gameplay, because I remember when the Cats and Dogs expansion pack first came out, I was thinking, yeah, amazing, I'm going to do that. But then I saw so many different stray animals and I ended up adopting them, because even though they're just pixels, I felt really bad for them. And so I don't regularly play with stray animals in the game. So I'm not sure if a cat would actually use a litter box, but it was just something that I was thinking in my head. And I know I've moved on into the next room, but something else that I did want to mention about one of the little girls really quickly is the one that sleeps on the opposite side. I was thinking that they are quite rebellious, and so you might notice in the screenshots I placed down some like, I think like an air horn and like random like more like naughtier items underneath their bed to kind of indicate, you know, you got one kid that's quite into animals and quite, I was thinking, quite pleasant to be around, and the other one's a little bit of a nuisance to be around or something. But now moving on, as you can see, I have now moved on into the teenage girl's bedroom. Now for this sim, I kind of gave her a little bit of her own storyline, which I think in gameplay would be just really fun to kind of like go on a bit of a discovery and try and figure it out or something. But pretty much, you know how I said this household, the mum and the dad, many years ago when they started having kids, they had to start off with a set of twins, which was a boy and a girl, and then they had another set of twins, which was a boy and a boy, and then they had just a single girl, and their last set of children, if you want to put it that way, ended up being a boy and a girl again. So in total this household has 3 set of twins, but there is one teenager that doesn't have any twins, and it is this girl. Now to start off with, I kind of tried to decorate her room in a more of like an edgy kind of way. I imagine that she really likes like rock music, and maybe sometimes she'll go to like concerts that are in like the town centre, and she's an edgy kind of character. I imagine her to maybe always wear maybe like Doc Martens, and maybe she has like ripped tights and stuff. I imagine that she's quite independent, and so I am going to be giving her a part-time job in my save file. Hope you can see at the back of her door I purposely placed down a like cooking apron. I was thinking that she's maybe like a barista or something in a local cafe in the world of Chestnut Ridge. But this girl, yeah, I feel like she's so misunderstood in her family, and she just feels left out. I mean, she's the only one out of her brothers and her sisters that doesn't have a twin that she can relate to. I mean, in all fairness, her eldest brother did pass away, and so, you know, one of her sisters doesn't really have a twin that they can talk to all the time, but she just feels really left out in a sense of, you know, every other one of her siblings has at some point had a twin. Why has she not had a twin? And basically the idea that I've got for this sim is in between all the different children that the mum and dad of this household had together, the mum, basically, cut long story short, had an affair, and as a result, this teenager arrived. I say this, she didn't pop out the womb wearing her Doc Martens and her ripped tights. When she arrived, she was obviously a baby. But yeah, I imagine that the mum of this household many, many years ago had a secret affair with a maybe fellow resident of Chestnut Ridge. I'm not too sure, but basically the teenage girl, she always has felt like left out, and I just thought for a storyline purpose, it would be really fun if, yeah, she was actually a result of a secret affair, and in my mind she actually doesn't know it yet. And so to me, the way that I'm picturing the storyline could play out is, you know, she always feels so different from everyone. I imagine she's got quite a lot of her mum's genetics like the rest of her brothers and sisters, so she doesn't look too like different from them. But yeah, eventually in gameplay you could potentially discover who her dad is going to be. I am going to be making her dad, and I'm not sure if I'm going to make it so she knows them or if she doesn't know them, because with the, I think it was the Lovestruck expansion pack, they implemented a feature which I'm not sure if it actually is a part of the DLC itself or if they put it into base game, I'm not too sure, but there is basically this thing now where you can click on a sim in your Sims relationships and you can basically make it hide the relationship. I'm not sure if I should make it so she actually knows who her dad is. Maybe it was a close family friend many years ago, and maybe the mum one night just, yeah, had a secret fling with this fellow family friend and resulted in a pregnancy. Or maybe it was just a random sim that her mum knew quite well but she's never met in her life, and through gameplay you could try and discover who her biological dad is. I like the idea of maybe her mum was always planning on telling her when she was a little bit older, because I imagine when her mum passed away she was quite younger than what she is right now. I mean, her mum passed away a few years ago, and so she might have been benchmark maybe about 10, 11 or something like that. So maybe her mum was always planning on telling her. And I also do like the idea that maybe her mum like wrote her a letter explaining it all, and maybe you could like pretend to find this letter in gameplay or something. I definitely like that type of storyline. But yeah, maybe her mum was going to tell her one day, but then sadly she never got a chance, and maybe somehow the girl can like stumble across this letter. I didn't actually place a letter, but you can kind of like pretend for gameplay or something. But you could, yeah, pretend to find a letter, and then it all comes out. By the way, I imagine the dad has absolutely no idea. Thinks that, you know, that his daughter is his biological daughter, and so he has no Scooby. But maybe one day you could actually just run into this sim. Say, for example, if you ever did play this household in my save file and you play as a teenage girl, maybe you could use it as some sort of like gameplay initiative, and maybe you get her to run around all the different worlds, or maybe just stay in the world of Chestnut Ridge. I don't know where her biological dad is going to be, but you could try and play maybe like the Jean game, even though that might be quite hard because, like I said, I imagine that she looks a lot like her mum, and so maybe I'll give her the same maybe like hairstyle. No, actually, do you know what I've just had an idea of? Maybe, and I've only just thought of this now, but maybe I can make it so her and her biological dad have like the same maybe birthmark or maybe beauty spot, and then that way, because obviously trying to figure out who her dad is, you could just cheat and you could just go into her family tree and then the answers are there. But yeah, maybe if you actually want to play like a little mini game and try and figure it out, I'll make it so her biological dad will have the exact same birthmark or beauty spot, not sure which one, but as her, and then you could try and run around the world and try and match it up. Oh no, I love that idea. How fun would that be? No, I want to do that now. But I know who the dad would be, so I can't do it myself. But no, that sounds really fun. No, I love that idea. Okay, anyway. Sorry, that was a complete tangent about the teen girl. But yeah, I really loved the storyline that she is so different from the rest of her siblings. And she's always just, you know, tried to figure out why does she feel so different. And she always just thought, oh, maybe it's not because I haven't got a twin and I can't relate on that level. But no, it's because you've only got half of their genetics. The other half, you don't even know who they are. But either way, getting back to the build, as you can see, I'm currently coming in and decorating actually the teen twin boys' bedroom. I'm so sorry that I completely spoke over the younger little boy's bedroom, but hopefully you noticed when I was decorating that room, like I said, downstairs, I tried to make it a little bit like spacey, and so I placed some like space posters in there and like random like robotic stuff and quite a lot of like sciencey bits. I imagine that one day he wants to grow up and do something related to maybe like science or maybe like space or something. For the teen twin boys, I actually don't really know what kind of personality that they do have. Maybe it's a little bit of a mismatch. They kind of like a lot of different things. I really struggle sometimes giving teen boys in particular personalities, because I must admit, I feel like I always go down the route of, okay, well, maybe one really likes music and maybe one's really naughty. I do imagine them both to be quite naughty. I will say that. I imagine that they're quite pranksters in school. I don't know if they even go to school. Maybe they just like bunk off a lot of the time and they just run around the world of Chestnut Ridge causing absolute chaos or something. But yeah, I didn't really have a set personality for the teen boys. I was more so just thinking about the personality of, yeah, the edgy teen girl. But either way, besides the point, moving over, as you can see, I've now moved on into the next bedroom, which is the young adult's room, who is the eldest sister of the household. So in here, I didn't really end up placing down too many Easter eggs in this bedroom for you to kind of like see in either the screenshots or discover in gameplay if you ever downloaded this build or if you ever visited this build. But one thing that I did do is opposite her bed, I placed down a bookcase, and on the bookcase I placed down some like little hand-drawn debug cards. They're from the season's expansion pack, and basically if you ever get a kid to sit at a drawing table, you can get them to make all these different like seasonal crafts. I was thinking that her little girl downstairs made her some cards, and so yeah, she's just placing down onto her bookcase. Like I said, it's not really an Easter egg, but it's the only really one thing that I could place down into that room that kind of had some sort of meaning in the bedroom itself. But now, as you can see, I've now moved on into the last bedroom of this house, and this is the dad's bedroom. So in here, something that I wanted to point out, I know the placement of the bed is not the most ideal because the bed itself is kind of like in the middle of two of the front windows of this room, and realistically speaking there is a completely blank wall on the right hand side that I could have easily put the bed up against. But just because the way that sometimes I like to like lay out beds in my floor plans, if I would have had the bed any other way, it would kind of then be symmetrical to another bed in the upstairs level of this house, if that makes any sense. I just don't like it when sometimes you go into like the overhead and you can see Sims sleeping in all the same direction. It just kind of like annoys me sometimes, and so I did kind of purposely place down the bed in a bit of an awkward way, but I kind of did it for a bit of a reason. But in this room, I was thinking the right hand side of the bed is the side that his wife used to sleep on, and so you might notice that I placed down a little cobweb over there because, you know, she hasn't been here in a while. But then I also placed down some debug photos on her bedside table, which I imagine are kind of like photo albums that maybe sometimes the dad likes to, you know, like flick through to remind himself of her or something. But other than that, I'm going to pretty much finish this build off by decorating the hallway, and that is pretty much it. So anyway guys, I'm going to end this voiceover right here. As always, you can download this build via the gallery. My gallery ID is JessicapieYT, or just search for the hashtag JessicapieYT or just the hashtag Jessicapie. As always, thank you guys so much for watching this video, and as always, if you do like my content then please do subscribe, and hopefully I will see you in my next Sims 4 speedrunning video. Bye guys.